So this is a little mini session where you've had a lot of input by now if you came to both sessions, and it's time to reflect. So if you have your book handy, your favorite version of it online or, hard copy, and you have some paper, we want you to prepare for the individual, for the breakout sessions when we all get together in about an hour or so or less. So you have something to share. And we're asking you the question that I hope now will show on the screen. Here we go, which is the overview question we had for this help wanted session. And you'll find out about what help is wanted soon. But our overview question is, how have the consequences of the rebellion and the default affected your life? Yes, very much a chance to reflect on personal transformation. And Chris and I have tried it out, and I'm getting insights just from having put this session together, and I hope you will too. So we want to use this as our guide to take notes. And then when you get into personal session, this is very important. Your personal notes are yours to keep. We want you to have this precious time to reflect about your life and hope, like me, you'll start to get some insights about how your whole life fits together, your life of service on Urantia. And as you do that, you may find things you want to also share with your group, but there is certainly no pressure to do so. But we wanted you to have this reflective time. So in this interactive workshop, which I have just introduced for you, Chris and I, working together, I won't go into history too much for you, but Chris and I met in Kansas when his father, Mike, was working as an air traffic controller at the Olathe, Kansas Air Station, and I was meeting other Urantia book readers in that area for the first time, somewhere around 73 or 74. And we were starting study groups, and Mike and Cindy, Chris's mother, were bringing all these wonderful little baby boys to all of our conferences and study groups, and Chris was one of them. So Chris is already part of my cosmic family, and I've gotten to know him. And of course, Alice, her parents I met in Wisconsin with Mark, and we are really family in the Urantia organizations that have developed so far now all over the planet. Wonderful, wonderful thing to celebrate today. And Jackie Curry really led us through a wonderful session not too long ago about what does it mean to be part of a cosmic family. So Chris and I decided we're looking at what it's like to be an Agandonter today. All of us are the Agandonters from Urantia. We're living in Urantia's post-bestowal age, and David and Marilyn will cover a lot more about all of this tomorrow, about the different planetary epochs and ages. And we're joining our cosmic family, we decided, in problem solving. Now, there's a lot of things that is going to enhance our moral careers. We're told that that happens when we're from a rebellion, isolated world. Our mortal careers are enhanced, not just here, but all the way through our ascension career, which is a great gift. So how is it enhanced? Well, Chris decided if you survive life on this planet, even for a little while, you probably become a pretty good problem solver, we hope. And so that's what we're talking about today. Now, in our educational process, especially for in-depth study, we usually would develop some learning objectives. So at the end of this session, we hope, and I know a lot of you here know a lot about the rebellion and default. So we hope you'll be able to describe the consequences, to express it to someone else, to describe it. What were losses and gains? We know the gains by now are 1,000 times more than the losses. That's saying a lot. So on a planet like this one, that may not be easy to see. So we hope you'll be able to describe to others the consequences, good and bad, of rebellion and default. Discuss the differences between rebellion and default, because there there are differences. Describe and discuss progressive recovery from rebellion and default. We're 200,000 years into recovery with a lot of help. And we want people to feel that they can serve effectively with our cosmic family in Urantia's post-bestowal age. We've got an opportunity here on this planet like no one else has. And it changes the minute we go to the mansion worlds. The value of what we can do here right now on this planet is just wonderful. So my quick introduction, those are the learning objectives. And at the end, you'll see some questions that will help you in your discussion as well. But take notes about your own experiences. And I put together two really quick timelines. The first one is what Jackie covered this morning. We have a hard time, at least I do, dealing with the size of these numbers. But the primitive era really started 100 trillion years ago. Then after a lot is described about that for space fans, 200 trillion years, Nebadon first began to function. Michael's creation was registered on Uversa. Then 1 billion years ago, Urantia was registered as a planet. And 900 million years ago, the first scouting party arrived. This is what Jackie talked about this morning for the 60th Urantia experiment. And the key thing here is, this is a quote, to amplify and improve the Satania type of Nebadon life patterns. This was authored by Life Carrier and all other papers as well, or comments, by a life carrier who was a member of the original core and now a resident observer, at least as far as 1935, when the book was published. One thing people may not realize is that our original life carriers are still here. I mentioned this morning that even though we don't have Adam and Eve to help us, we have our original life carriers. And we have the Melchizedek receivers that were here originally, who gave us the next timeline. So here we have the development of the planet, the big picture, but the human timeline, we zoom ahead 900 million years, folks, to something that's a little easier for us to imagine, 100 million years ago. And please do take photos of this if you want. We do have the questions available in chat, so you can use it in your small group discussion. But just putting this together taught me something. I wanted it for me and Chris so we could quickly refer to things that might come up in our session. But look at this. 500,000 years is when the planetary prince came, and for 300,000 years did a fabulous job. We had a high culture on Urantia. So 200,000 years ago, which still seems like a lot to most people on the planet if they're not Urantia book students, that's when all of the trouble started. And that was a question this morning. Was there something about our being a decimal planet that caused trouble? The life carriers were completely successful. In fact, I count that as a plus. What the life carriers did for us in those 500,000 years of primitive man developing early evolution of will, and even the Andonic tribes were able to come to peace. You may not realize that before the planetary prince came. They did something fabulous for us that laid a foundation for Urantia culture that I'm not sure we always appreciate because we're kind of looking closer to our lifetime. And we do get there quickly because Urantia was quarantined, as you know. But remember, the quarantine is the system circuits. It has nothing to do with being cut off from God the Father or paradise. That was never possible. It was impossible to do that. So Gabriel was warned it might take 1 million years to wind up the consequences when the rebellion first broke out. We're only 200,000 years in, so we have a lot of work to do. Rebellion ends on Jerusalem after 7 years. And then look at all this wonderful help that arrived. We have the system sovereign. Now we have Adam and Eve. They defaulted, but it's not a rebellion. It's a default. Very, very different. They're rehabilitated. They're advising our planet now. Look at how much help we got so fast when we needed it. I know you're all familiar with this, but look at all that happened. Machiavelli came. Michael announced at the end of the Adamic default that this would be his planet. He made the decision at that point. And we have just been showered with help from our cosmic family. And of course, many of you know, everybody always, when they hear me talk, they say, when is she going to cry? Well, it's just so beautiful. I'm not crying because I'm sad. I just think this is magnificent. So here we are, Agendanters, really grateful for what we have today with time on Zoom. And on Jerusalem, these ascenders, I want you to know this, were Agendanters highlighted, evolutionary will creatures who believe without seeing, persevere when isolated, and triumph over insuperable difficulties, even when alone. Now, doesn't that sound like Urantia to you? We're still triumphing. I mean, that wonderful, and Katerina, thank you for that beautiful opening, that rendition of Amazing Grace, and so many other wonderful things happening on our planet right now give us real hope that what we're reading is given to us to carry forward from this fabulous foundation, and for love to triumph on the planet as we are promised that it will. So here we are, Agendanters, and this is my chance to turn it over to Chris. One of our other favorite additional quotations is about Urantia humor, and Chris and I definitely have it. So Chris, I want you to take it away. I'm gonna, I think, have to let you share the screen. I'm gonna stop screen sharing. And of course, when Chris and I were planning this session, what does Barb think? I think about things like, well, what's Tabamantia thinking about what's going on down here? You know, I'm thinking of that big hierarchy of wonderful celestial helpers that I just quickly showed you on a timeline. And so that's my kind of way of approaching Urantia right now. Tabamantia has made visits here, and I think of, well, okay, if we were all going to make a report to Tabamantia about how we're doing, what would we say? I bet at least some of his associates might be listening into our conversation today as we think about how we're doing on Urantia. So Chris, take it away.
I started talking, I'm muted. Just kick me right off. I don't deserve this. So one of the great things about teaming up and working with another person is you get to see two different approaches to the same subject. And so Barbara, who's this well-organized and accomplished teacher, comes in and she's got learning objectives. She's got the outline. She knows exactly how to conquer the approach. And then you get Chris, and I'm at best a wannabe storyteller. And so when I think about how Tabamantia and how the universe of universes thinks about our planet and our rebellion that we've been going through, my mind immediately goes to the 1992 film Batman Begins.
Who would have thought?
Right. And so, as many of you I'm sure know and remember, and I guess this is where I'm supposed to share the screen to just help highlight it, is that in Batman Begins, are you seeing, what are you seeing? Let's see here.
Oh, there it is.
There we go. Penguins take over, because, you know, the bad guy penguin, he comes and he takes over. And so all these wonderful penguins are walking around with rockets on their back, and some of them are wearing adorable hats, you know, to protect them. But this is 1992. And so it's the very beginning of modern CGI effects. And so they're using some real penguins, some are mechanical penguins, and some are just computer graphic penguins. As much as I want to continue to watch this loop, I suppose we should stop. And so, stop that share. There we go, we should be back. And so there's this interesting story that the computer graphics organizers have about this, which is, you know, they captured penguins with motion capture suits, and then they programmed, you know, they built the penguins in their computers, and they wrote a program for all of these computer programs to follow, or computer penguins to follow as they march down the streets and try to conquer, I think it's Gotham. And so they execute the program. They've got the hundreds of penguins walking down the street, and some of these penguins start spinning in a loop and going off and just doing their own thing. And so they're all following the same program. They've got this same design, and yet somehow some small percentage of them just walk off and do their own thing. And who knew this would happen? And I think that's the same way that the universe looks at our planet. They've got this plan for ascension, for planetary epochs and how we should be moving along. And they've implemented it across the entire universe. And yet some small percentage of us are just going to go walking off and doing our own thing. And frankly, it draws the eye. It's what they want to look at because they know what the other penguins are supposed to be doing and how they're supposed to be doing it. It's those of us who are walking off in a weird way that everyone just wants to stop and study. It's why throughout the Urantia book, they tell us that, throughout the universe, everyone's just kind of watching us and seeing what we do. One of my favorite quotes from the Urantia book, and of course, like many of you, I have dozens of them, is that the reversion directors, one of the things people like to do is just listen to the reversion directors from Urantia tell stories about life on Urantia. It's one of their favorite pastimes to pass, when they've got some time for entertainment. And so we've got this world that has been, waylaid by rebellion. And so when we think about, and when we get into our discussion groups, when we think about how it's affected our life, we can think about how it's affected our ability to serve one another, because that's part of what life is about, is our ability to serve one another. And so there's lots of ways to think about it on a planet like ours. We've got this world that's still dealing from a rebellious planetary prince, from a botched material son and daughter mission. We haven't had a magisterial teaching mission, and our bestowal mission came straight from Salvington, right? So, and then we've got this book, this wonderful book that actually imparts to us teacher training son levels of understanding. One of the things Barbara said just in passing, I don't even know if she knew that she said it, is go off and grab your favorite book, which just implies that you've got about a dozen of them laying around. And you sometimes think, I think I'm going to go for the leather one tonight, or I think I'm going to go for the iPad one right now, because, we all have our favorites. So grab your favorite book because it does impart teacher training levels of understanding to us. And so when we're approaching service and ministry on a planet like ours, so Barbara and David were talking about, I come from this Urantia book reading family, and Mike Wood, who's my father, one of the best stories I remember, I've had other people tell me about Mike Wood, is that they would go and see him at a conference every 3 years. And every single conference they see him at, he's carrying a baby. And it doesn't matter. 3 years later, he's carrying a baby. 3 years after that, he's carrying a baby. All that changes is the number of children walking after him, like ducklings following the mother duck, with each conference. And so I am one of 6 kids. I'm one of the older ones. I'm 2 of 6. And so one of our chores as growing up, especially with the older kids, is we had to clean the younger kids' room, which is where we tried to keep all the toys isolated to, right? And so there are letter blocks, there are Lincoln Logs, there are Legos, there's clothes, there's dinosaurs. It's all just, exploded into the mess of the kids' room. And every once in a while we had to go and clean it. And so a well-organized person, the way my wife, approaches organizing things, is that she will go and you'll clean up all the letter blocks and put them away, and you'll clean up all the Legos and put them away. You'll clean up all the dirty clothes and put them away. And that's the way that, most planetary moral epics progress. On your ranch, it's more like how I would approach it, which is I would go outside and get the big broom, not the small little brooms, but the big ones you use outside, right? You go and get one of those brooms and you start sweeping everything in the room into the middle until it's just this big pile of everything. And then you just kind of start reaching down and seeing what you got. You reach in, you've got a Lego and you've got some dirty socks, right? And you deal with that. And you just kind of keep reaching down into it. It's the same thing with our world, is that we're living in this world that's still dealing with planetary prince levels of service. And so if you want to go out and deal with getting people access to clean water and clean food and medicine and family life. Well, family life, maybe we should come with the material son and daughter, but still we're dealing with all of these things all at once. But we're also dealing with, we haven't had the magisterial son yet, but we still feel this need to express ourselves through art and through music and through different modes of expression other than through just language. And that's something that really gets developed at a magisterial son level. And we've got this post-bestowal world that we're living in, and this is supposed to be the time of flourishing philosophy and learning and thinking. And so as we're at the verge of, of genetic editing and of self-driving cars and of robotics revolutions, we need to have these type of philosophical and ethical discussions. We need people to lead them because, we're diving into this whether we like it or not. And so my mother used to always say that in most worlds, when they're smart enough to develop nuclear weapons, they're advanced enough culturally to know not to. And so we've got to, deal with all of these things all at once on a philosophical and educational level. And so we've got to do all of these things all at once. And so in your life, in your service, as we're dealing with this planet that is wrought by rebellion, how is it that you're dealing with it? Did you spend 5 years wanting to do one service and then just completely switch and do another? That's what a lot of people do, and that's great. So anyway, so as we get into our discussions, think about these things, how you are serving on this planet of rebellion. And Barbara, I'm throwing it back to you.
All right. Thank you so
We thought
much.
that we might not have enough stuff to last a whole hour.
Well, we hope we don't, because we really want to give you, for example, right now, if I get this up right, Chris and I are saying, and I now call this the March of the Penguins, thanks to Chris. I mean, I get it with all this confusion. So for me, continuing on with what are the consequences, actually, it's probably the third paragraph of the foreword. We all know we're here to expand cosmic consciousness, or expand cosmic consciousness and enhance spiritual awareness. But the very third objective is to prevent confusion. How in the world is a group like this, with that pile of kids' toys in the room, going to even start to not only clear up confusion on Urantia, but also prevent it? That's what one of the purposes of the Urantia book is. So here we are, known for our humor, because I think it's a survival trait on Urantia. And also we inherited it from Adam and Eve, thank God. Here's some of the thoughts. Exigencies, by the way, are the words of our master Seraphim, our chief of Seraphim. In paper 114 in the very first section, where they list all the things that are unusual about Urantia, there's a list of, I think it's 7. Exigency means an emergency. Now, do you think we have some exigencies on Urantia right now? In other words, things that need immediate attention, things that can, what I call, hit below the waterline if you're out boating and you might, drown. So look for things in your life, maybe service you're doing, that's related to something that's the dictionary definition of exigency. I had to look it up because I thought, well, I'm not real sure about that. And it's something that the Revelators chose, and certainly our chief primary Supernaphim, who's completely rebellion proof here with our master Seraphim, uses it. Exigencies. We still have the exigencies. We're not nearly done. What about disruptions? What are some of the things that are disrupted because of the Adamic default? And we just figured this particular group, even if you're a new reader, could just draw on your own knowledge of what happened as a result of the rebellion, what the consequences are, and the disruption. And what we also wanted to mention is that Urantia's post-bestowal age started with Michael's successful planetary mission, and he created all those changes in our planetary government administration that our loyal Seraphim now carry out. And of course, our associate chief was took charge of Seraphim on Jerusalem when so many of the Seraphim on Jerusalem went into rebellion at the time. So we've really got just a terrific group helping us in Michael's post-bestowal age. But would you say we're still having lots of challenges, really struggling, with this? I didn't mean to do what I just did. Can you see my screen that I'm trying to share or not? I probably just hit the wrong button. I don't know even why I hit it. Just a second. So, that's kind of where we're coming from here. And we want to hear your reports. We want to break in time for you to report back. So as you're reflecting on your own service, these are the ones for the post-bestowal age: social fraternity, intellectual cross-fertilization. This starts by saying the bestowal son is the Prince of Peace, and where are we with that? Intellectual cross-fertilization, ethical awakening, political wisdom, spiritual insight. What's going on for all these penguins walking around confused in the city and finding their way and creating new things? What's happening for us? So when you get to your breakout session, we have questions related to our learning objectives, of course. And Chris allowed me to do that. And these are just starter questions. So we'll give you maybe just, let's say 3 to 5 minutes to write some notes for yourself. I promise that reflection time. And we're also going to take our stretch break before we go into breakout groups. So make a few notes about what's coming to you in your life, what's happening, and on these questions that you might share or not in your breakout teams. And stay with us in the large group, but if you need to get up and stretch, move around, drink some water, please do. But do take about 5 minutes or so to reflect. Just write whatever comes to mind. I added something in the chat that you might want to add to your notes. We're just starting into Michael's post-bestowal age, and I forgot to put the reference in there for it, but it could be as long as 10,000 years or even 100,000 years under Michael's administration through Makaventa and all of the different ones. And remember that magisterial sons come during the post-bestowal age because it's supposed to be the flowering of this magnificent age preceding light and life, just a magnificent age of peace and cultural civilization and development. So that's why so many of us talk about magisterial sons. It's just a question of when they'll come and how. It's not a question of whether they'll come during this particular post-bestowal age. Just because we missed it before doesn't mean we won't be having visits of the magisterial sons for a very long time as we start developing civilization toward light and life. With a lot of exciting things going on. Also, in your discussion groups and in your individual notes, Chris and I could really use help with your questions. We're covering a lot of ground with a lot of people on these Zooms. And as I say, I'm most comfortable in a whole workshop where we're face to face and worshiping and playing together for a whole weekend to cover something like this. So please share your questions also, not just answers to questions, but we really learn by continuing to share and ask questions together and support each other in discovery of the answers. Once again, those questions will be posted in chat by Tim. Is that right, Tim? You can post our reminder questions about the focus of discussion. Mainly, it's hard to be of service without having the understanding of what helps and what the problem solving is for some of these exigencies and disruptions. It's a good time to mention kindred spirits too. I think most of you have heard that line and remember it from the teachings. Remember what Chris said, those penguins can be off in all different directions, and there's so many ways to clean a messy room. It's all about personality and our uniqueness. And we do tend to group in kindred spirit groups. but we also come together best, say, on the constellation worlds, where we've learned to work with that diversity. And diversity is one of the main challenges mentioned in Urantia's post-Vistol age, specifically the diversity that we have in language and culture and racial backgrounds of various kinds and ethnic backgrounds, whatever, however you want to look at it all. So how are we doing? Have you got some ideas you might want to share in your breakout teams, or even questions you might want to ask?
We made it back.
We're here. We didn't get lost in space. We got 8 groups reporting, Chris. Are you and I going to take notes on these 8 groups reporting?
I mean, the way you asked the question makes me think that the answer is yes.
We better both take notes.
Who remembered to look at their number? Yeah.
I was in one along with some fine people.
Oh, Ken.
Thank you. I'm not the spokesperson. We have
Oh.
The Urantia Book Society of Oklahoma, a quartet group that is going to report for us from breakout room number 1. Take it away, UBS. Okay. If you're ready for it. Are you
We're
ready?
ready.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know about your group, but
Yeah,
Chris and I are ready.
they're not on my current screen. Up, Karen, we need you. Unmute you. Karen, Oklahoma, you have to unmute yourself.
I thought I changed the settings so people could unmute themselves. Are people having trouble unmuting themselves?
I did not. Well,
No, because you're a co-host.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, please try again, Tim.
Okay. It's going to mute everyone. So everyone's going to have to unmute themselves. Hold on one second. Okay. Now everyone should be able to unmute themselves. Please don't all do it, but whoever needs to speak.
Okay, wait a minute. Tom Allen is coming. He's a spokesperson. What? Oh. Well, I didn't agree to it, but apparently you did.
It's how we
They don't sound like
so
they
what?
sound like they're from Oklahoma. That's authentic. Yeah. Okay.
Just those penguins
Come on,
wandering
big boy.
down the street.
You could get closer to the mic if you wanted to just walk toward the camera right there. They can see you.
And even the reluctant will leave.
Or if you want to look at all of us, here we are.
Ah,
Hey.
Mute myself.
Hi, Claire.
Well, I mean, we just talked about the wonderful opportunities we have as Dancers to go forth. And in spite of the deficiencies that we have on our planet, which are a multitude, we are missing out on a bunch of things, but we have the beautiful opportunity to have to be Dancers. And, certainly Ken Kaiser ought to really be the one that says more about what we said. He was a moderator.
no, Mike agreed that he would say something too. You all agreed.
Well, I thought the best comment was to love yourself and love your neighbor, to heal the world with the love that we have expressed to us from the Father.
It was a very spiritual group. I'm telling you, it was beautiful.
Learned.
Feel free to jump on to group number 2.
All right, group 2.
We group one.
Well, Katharina Becker was taking notes, so I think she would be a wonderful person to report.
Actually, I did not. I think we never decided who would. That's what we did.
No, we never decided. John, did you take notes? Because I did.
No, I was having trouble with my computer.
Well, I can give it a shot if you want me to.
Please, Bob.
We had a great lively discussion, to say the least. We went all the way up to the Supreme and started to discuss that. We also had some connections. I'm giving some housekeeping here. Lee Colbert is out in Albuquerque. They're close to Catharina. And he and I had spent quite a few years in the same study group. And I had no idea it was him until he spoke up, because he had phoned in on a phone. He's probably still there at this point. So we all made some wonderful connections there, as well as John and I, who had very similar Catholic backgrounds. We started out by, I think all of us agreed that the answer to the question of how have the consequences of the rebellion and default affected our life, we really never thought of that question. So Barbara and Chris, thank you for posing that one, because that got us kind of started thinking, okay, well, why would we think that this didn't really affect our life, but yet we've studied this, you know, for those of us that have spent some time, we thought a lot about the rebellion. We thought, we've, some of us have been to workshops on the rebellion, and we kind of came up that there were some interesting things. And Barbara, your exigency is how I said the word. I'm not sure I can say it the way you said it. We tried to tackle some of those, and we sort of realized that some of the examples are that we have a very diverse planet. In fact, because we are, the experimental planet, and such as the time lag between the time that the planetary prince actually came, the 500,000 years, which is sort of out of the normal, that these things give us the ability for a strong sense of discernment. What are some of the exigencies? Well, there were three major things that came up. One was the difference between sacred and secular. The second one was the atonement. And we talked about the organization on the planet. One of the, some of our discussion is that, well, we've got fossilized religions, and that's caused an organization on this planet that seems to be an exigency in itself because of the atonement. And that statement that's in paper 195, I believe, where most professed Christians are actual secularists, that this the midwayers said that the secular totalitarianism is something that could cause a catastrophe. So this is certainly an exigency that needs to be dealt with. But our discussion then, moved into the Supreme, believe it or not, and it's the concept about how to think about God. And here we are, we're all contributors to the whole. And it was John that brought up this a wonderful set of questions in paper 117 that at least to me they look like the altruistic side of how we should approach the whole. And it might be that at least the community of students in the Urantia community have this concept of the Supreme as being a deity, and that as each individual, which is the way that the planet is today, capitalism shows that this is totally individualistic, and in fact, all of the Eastern side of the planet is moving into capitalism. So we've got an interesting thing happening here. But the first question, I will read it here, and it's from paper 117, section 4, paragraph 13. And so the decision awaits each of you as it once awaited each of us. Will you fail the God of time, who is so dependent upon the decisions of the finite mind? So I think we came full circle with the Supreme, and that's how we ended our discussion. And of course, like everybody else, we got caught with 52 seconds left to go back into the group. So there you are.
Thank you, Bob.
Well done, Bob.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Keep going. Number 3.
I think that was our group. I lost track of our time, of our number. We were having such a fun discussion, each of us contributing in a very fun way, our individual perceptions of how the living on Urantia, in our planet with its double defection, Lucifer, rebellion, and default, affected each of us. And they all contributed in such a beautiful way. We are all ascending sons of God. Each of us so unique in our approach to spirituality that there's no way to truly summarize the gifts that I received, and each of us received from each other in just listening to the stories and the insights of our fellow brothers. This was a truly unique experience, Barbara, and I appreciate you giving it to us. We are one. It is most important that we remember that the fundamental problem with the use of Lucifer rebellion was the concept of me versus we. That which Jesus taught was the brotherhood, the unity of the sonship. And it is so important that we remember that it is God is unity. There is no other. And love of the Father rules an entire universe, and God only gives. These were some of the concepts that we each discussed in our own individual way and contributed to the group. And it was a beautiful session. Thank you for allowing us that opportunity.
Brings me joy. I knew that relationships and our unity with everything and would come out of this, the joy of relationship and love. Thank you. If we have a chance and take the time and provide the environment for it, it's a great experiment. Thank you all for participating.
For sure.
All right, I guess that leads to me then. Group 4 leads to us, I should say, to be more correct. Well, a lot of our discussion centered on the negative aspects of how they created an environment for us to grow more. So there was a lot of talk about, you know, the confusion that has resulted about whether or not so many people believe in God. A couple of people in our group threw out statistics that I can't confirm, but one person said as many as 20% of the world are atheists at this time. So, you know, with that as the background, you know, how many folks out there are just not believing in God creates a huge challenge for particularly those that are blessed with this revelation to have to view life in such a manner that we need to be able to do something about it. So a couple people, one person in particular in our group, I'm going to leave everyone's name out just because I don't know if they wanted it to be shared with the whole group, but one person said that it's a very positive matter for him because he's interested in building his morantial life now. And he's comforted in the fact that he can, you know, work on his own soul in the face of all of these challenges. And that was echoed by several other people in our group. Two people actually said that, you know, it's almost unfair to ask this question because of our limited perspective of time. So it's hard to take into account, you know, this vast stretches of time and how it's impacted because of our limited perspective. But at the same time, that same person said, but in my lifetime, you know, my grandma used to tell me about horse and buggy, and now, you know, we're landing on the moon. So there's been a tremendous like growth in progress. That was echoed by another member of our group that talked about the advances in genetics. And we all know that the revelers take a strong position on eugenics. And that same person, I should caution, said that we're not ready really to do anything, but we're getting to the point where we're advancing the science enough that could be on the horizon. But our ethics and our culture has not advanced well enough. Several of our group talked about working as we pass by, myself included. And I feel that there's an element where when there is that overwhelming kind of feeling as a result of the rebellion and the default, I guess that's a good place to weave in someone else's comment, which was really good. One of the more mature people in our group pointed out that where is it? I have notes here. I'll forward these notes to you guys. Because of the rebellion, the economic system has dominated this world at this time, she said. And she said that this negative fact has caused a lot of people to lose connection with one of the most important things Jesus taught, which is that we are sons of God, not sons of materialism. She didn't say that, I'm saying that. So that disconnect right there increases our challenge dramatically, which kind of goes back to the old atheist agnostic status of quote, so many people. I think everybody in the group sort of echoed the idea that this challenge that we're facing, I'm getting a lot of wind here, hopefully you guys can still hear me. This challenge that we're facing is a real positive thing. And then right at the very end, we were getting to what I wanted to talk about because I didn't get a chance to share. So I'm going to get my 2 minutes in right now. We often refer in this group of Urantia book students, we often refer to ourselves as Agandanters. But I may become the pariah of this group right now because I'm going to say Agandanter status is earned. It's something that if you look at the actual definition, there's one word that really pops out. It's triumph over insuperable difficulties. And a quick right click of insuperable tells us impossible to overcome. Okay, so if you're going to look at your life and say, how am I triumphing over something that's impossible to overcome? Yeah, you might be kicking booty towards some Agandanter status. And we were just kind of getting to that discussion right then and there. Here comes a hot rod down the road, so I'm going to finish with that. But, really, can we pass by and achieve that loving service in such a way that we do indeed one day get to call ourselves an Agandanter?
Okay.
Thank you so much. Really quickly, Bob, you're right. It's exigencies and exigency. X is the first syllable pronounced. And take it away, John.
Okay, from group 5. Question about the consequences of the rebellion and how it affected your life. Some of the things were sicknesses and fears. One mentioned that she was raised in an atheistic home and country, but the result was a blessing because she found the truth. She wasn't raised with religion, but she found truth. Number 2, what are the consequences of the rebellion and default? One was evil and war. the lack of sisterhood and brotherhood on the planet, fighting between religions, and that the races evolved unevenly. The third one, what progress and recovery? Well, we don't throw Christians to the lions anymore. That's a good one. We are improving. International trade and scientific research, improvements in society. And the big one, we got the bestowal of Jesus. And then the spirit of truth and thought adjusters. So this is some good points here. The fourth one, what was recovery? No, yeah, recovery. The fourth one, what are we doing for service? And what would we like to do? We're helping the sick when we can. One fellow mentioned encouraging people to eat better, healthy foods to help fight disease. Also, Urantia book outreach, which has limited success. And another person said she got to help with raising grandkids and being influential in their lives. And for me personally, I'm retired, I would like to run an ice cream truck. And I'm sure I would eat all of the profits. Thank you.
Oh, it's fun. Thank you so much, John. I did want to mention, I appreciate your comment about not killing religionists, but there are religionists who are dying all over the world. It's true, we are being killed by others. There's still religious violence and warfare, sad to say. But it's good that we don't have some of the old methods of the old times in Christianity.
Barbara, I was from Group 6, and
Great.
we covered an awful lot of material. I did start things off with the thought of answering, because of our unusual circumstances on our world compared to a normal world, are we more or less fortunate as a world? Either way, are we less fortunate or more fortunate? And I kind of posed the question. I'd say it's not black and white. It is black or white, it is black and white in the sense that we are a world that has extraordinary challenges. And that to those who are God-centered and God-aware, it pushes us to a higher elevated place. To those who are living in an egotistical and darker world, they are going to suffer more in this world. So it really is a bell curve of experience that is accentuated by the fact that we truly are in a very unusual situation. And we still we're a hot ground here with Caligastia and Dalagastia still promoting the Luciferian manifesto on our world today. And everybody has to come to a choice, and we haven't resolved that issue on our world. So we're in a challenged world. That was the key. It started from there. The big question about today, the biggest worry that people talked about, and it was echoed by more than one, is the idea that we are treating our planet badly. And the idea of global warming, of pollution, we're making advances in terms of what we can do in pollution, and we're doing the right things, but we still live in a world that is predominantly causing more and more accumulated damage to Mother Nature on our planet. So that was brought up and discussed rather emotionally. Another one is, the idea that we do have now environmental projects that are here to sustain our world. They are in place. They are not yet completely embraced by the institutions of this world looking for immediate profits and so on. But we do have the ideals in place of how to do things the right way. We just haven't gotten to the point to put them into actual practice. We talked about the fact that because we are off the charts, we're no longer chartable. We're on our own chart, unique, that it's difficult to understand where we are in terms of our ethical status on our planet. Magisterial son coming, or was that already accomplished in Jesus, et cetera, et cetera. So we're kind of off the charts here. And our ethical status cannot really be compared to a normal world. Now, there may be on the stages towards light and life that we get back centered into a normal flow, but not at this particular time. We are certainly in flux and challenge. Another one, idea was projected for how do we promulgate ideas into ideals and make them stick into this world today in the 21st century? How do we do that? We have the ideals being stated, but we get very, very frustrated because they are not always promulgated into a world that ought to know better. The ideas of getting visions of light and life, looking towards the future, and then imagining with the vision and mission to make it happen. The threat to the earth right now is the key thing. We have to be very careful because this is a delicate life living system on our planet. Another one, we talked about the idea of adopting the Adamic sin, which was a lack of his genetics that should have been infused into all the 7 races of humanity. And we do have it. I think it's catalytic, and it will eventually, taking longer time, to have its effect as it spreads through the world. But I think right now, the idea that we are subject to genetic problems of the gene pool, for instance, of the things that we can inherit, that a mother and father can come together and create a child that is handicapped greatly because of certain inadvantageous connections or combinations of genetics. 21st century, our genetic engineering today is growing by leaps and bounds. We are mapping the simplest life forms. We are identifying chromosomal areas that are problems with certain gene pool effects that we can now start to identify. We can even, in vitro work, we can screen those fertilized embryos that have a greater chance of bringing out a healthier and more balanced, robust genetic person. So that's coming. And the question comes down again, as it always does, the idea of ethics and morality. This, we can do it, but what are the ethics behind it? And is it right to take God's prerogative away from him and become masters of our own genetic engineering? That's going to be a real challenge, I think, in this century. But the technology, you're not going to be able to stop it. The last thing we talked about was the idea that with the Urantia book, we are no longer living on 3 heavens. We have a cosmology now that goes through the local universe, into the super universes, into paradise. We have a cosmology right now that is much more expansive. And when it finally does start to sink into the cosmic consciousness, this is going to be a great boon for our future. So those were some of the ideas we talked about.
Thank you so much. And before I go further, I saw that Marvin raised his hand. Did you want to go next or have a comment, Marvin?
Just a quick comment. I love what everyone has shared. Thank you. And I love what you and Chris have put together, Barbara. Thank you. One of the very simple takeaways I'm left with as a result of this conversation is that the fundamental error of the rebellion, the Lucifer rebellion, and it was compounded by the chaos of the default, the Adamic default, is that there is no God. And countless hundreds of millions of people are wandering around with a sense of orphanhood, no interior connection with the indwelling spirit, which is where the nurture of love comes from, that allows us to live in any coherent, spiritually guided way in parent-child relationship with God. And so for me, the simple takeaway is any way we can share that simple availability that God loves us, that God is within us, that we each can access that in worship and in prayer and begin to feel that affection and have it nourish us and nurture us, is the key both the detriment of the rebellion and the key thing we can do in any small way to antidote the effects of the rebellion.
Thank you, Marvin. I'm so glad you're getting something out of it. Certainly rich for me and Chris. It's wonderful to have all of our Urantia students have a chance to share like this. Go ahead, everybody. I'm seeing some themes develop in notes we're taking. Carry on, folks. Who's next? We got almost there. We don't want to go overtime for all our groups.
Am I next, or is someone, I'm not sure what number we were.
7.
Oh, Cecilia, you 7?
No, I'm just saying the next group is 7.
Okay, well, if no one is stepping up, then why don't I do our group, and if there's another one, then we'll get to that.
Okay, and we'll hang on for this. It's a little over, but thanks. It's almost on time. Go ahead, Albert.
I'll try to be brief and get right to it. We had a very lively, group discussion, not surprisingly, great topic, and thanks for that to our host. Regarding the topic, some of the themes that got addressed were the fact that the rebellion and the default in particular associated with that has created disease, and we're all affected by that. COVID, of course, came up in that context, but also beyond that, people in our group are naturally experiencing, as we all are, the sufferings and the premature loss of life, or just the, especially difficult loss of life, or just not loss of life, but difficult circumstances because of health. So that, of course, as I say, if you've got your health, you've got everything. And so we got that issue. Other things that came up were why was Caligastia left on the planet, and the implications of that, and how that's affecting us, and all the teachings related, to that influence and so forth. And that question brought up the general perspective of thinking in creative versus dichotomous terms about it. Does it have to have been handled a certain way, or is it just that this is how it happens to be handled? And I think I raised a comment about how when Michael came here, he was told that if other rebellions occurred, they'd be wiped out right away. So what does all that mean exactly? So we kind of tossed around those issues on the cosmological level. What else did we talk about? Ethics and character development was one of the issues raised, in terms of how these problems that we're having naturally created deeper and more profound relationship to ethical and moral questions, and that character development is the natural outgrowth of having to apply oneself to extremely challenging circumstances. So we talked about soul growth in relationship to these challenges. Let's see. I think that's kind of most of it. I just mentioned also that, one of the challenging things about thinking creatively is that when there's an emergency, we want to try and deal with it as efficiently and effectively as possible. And so that creates some of the tension and challenges in communicating with each other, because we're caring so much. And we want to get to the very best solution, that sometimes that leads to narrower perspective and perhaps getting overly attached to our own thinking and all of these challenges. I'll leave it right there, Barbara, and let you take over. Thank you.
just throw one up on, we also talked about the courage, and I hear a lot in some of the interfaith groups about the courage to love. And in our case, it's just the courage to share, as Marvin was saying, the best we know of truth, beauty, and goodness anywhere and everywhere we can. Was there
If I could make just one last comment.
Yeah.
It's the other thing that I did want to mention and brought up there just at the end is how these circumstances are really pushing on the fundamental sanity issues of humanity. And at this point in time, the very basics of, what's male and female, what's a race, what are genetics and intelligence, and all of these issues are all up for grabs. And it's really like literally driving people crazy in their relationships and internally as well. And it just seems to speak to the nature of the extreme problems that we're having. Thank you.
Thank you all. I hope that you've had some ideas about deeper service, new service, more service, just whatever it is that can help our planet with our great people. I see Ken has raised his hand. Thank you all for reporting. I hope we didn't miss a group.
I think we missed group 8.
Did we miss somebody?
Actually, we missed group 7.
Oh, there you are.
Hello, I'm representing group 7.
Thank you.
So just quickly, I think just one thing. The consequence of rebellion was being cut off from our line of communication, the broadcast, the universe broadcast. So being in quarantine, we really don't know what's going on. So that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris, you want to say any closing words? Do people want to hang out longer or not? We will, if anybody wants to hang out. We're closing our workshop. So
thank you everyone for coming, and thank you to the fellowship for being flexible in this time of pandemic and transforming the study summer session into this virtual summer study session. It's the education committee put a lot of work into this, and we're very grateful to have it be available to us. So
Ken, you have another comment or
Thank you. I was wanting to assist with the conclusion. I don't need to be the last, but this opportunity, as Chris pointed out, to have a virtual summer study session has allowed a number of people that could not have traveled to Techne or wherever we would usually have it, has allowed a number of people to participate, which has been real exciting and fun. And because of this, sessions have been recorded, which was not usually possible with workshops in a in-person conference. So I had put in the chat about emailing to urantiaeducation@gmail.com for questions regarding the recordings. Jenna and Albert have offered to help get them actually up on the fellowship website and the links on the cloud there somehow. So if you don't readily find, if you're interested in the recordings and you don't readily find them on the fellowship website, you can write to urantiaeducation@gmail.com. But either way, the recordings will be happening and will be accessible sometime soon. Tim is working so hard at every workshop that the extracurricular time is somewhat truncated to try to get them ready speedily. But we'll work with Tim and getting the information to Jenna and Albert as quickly as possible to get them on the fellowship website. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Barbara and Chris. Go ahead.
I have a quick question about recordings. It's my ignorance of Zoom. Are the breakout rooms recorded and available, or is it just the main sessions that'll be on the website?
No, it's just the main session.
Okay. I thought so. Just wanted to be sure so people know. And you can always record your own recording of these things. That's something that we can't stop on Zoom, but they won't be up on the website, the breakout groups. Thanks. And thank you, Tim, for all you're doing.
Sure. Yes. You're welcome. It's fun.
I hope you see diversity of skills in our education groups and approaches. We try to get diversity because it just has better results. And maybe that's one of the things I see that's a positive about Urantia. In the long run, all of our diversity will add to what we can do as ag and Daunters.
Just want to add a thank you to Tim from the committee. And if you think this is fun, Tim, I have a lot more fun I can find for you.
I don't know if it'll be fun permanently, but it's been fun to learn and and help.
Okay.
Serve. I'll put it that way.
I'm getting helpful chat because host has to give permission in order to record it ourselves. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you want to record it on Zoom, you need that permission, and we don't give people that. But there's a way to record your screen no matter what's on it if you want to, and your computer sound. Anyone can do that.
That's what I was trying to get at. Yeah, you couldn't record it on Zoom, but you could record it on your computer. I'm learning, Albert, Gina.
You do have a record button, but if you click on it, it says the host has to give you permission.
Right. So, and it's being recorded, so that wouldn't do anything extra at this point. But yeah, normally you don't, you don't want people recording other people without their knowledge. But now it is all being recorded. So even if you could hit that button, it wouldn't change it.
I think what Tim is saying is the recording on Zoom as the platform is different from recording it on your own computer. Right. That's not something we can block. I just let people know that because it's important for protection of privacy sometimes. Right. When you come to these things.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Bobby.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Super Bobby.
Good night, Bobby. Bye, Marvin. Bye, puppy dog.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, all.
Thank you, Chris.
Good night, all. Be well. Namaste.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken.
Bye, Grace.
See some of you at the cafe.
Thank you, Stuart.